Hi, everyone. We are going to continue our lineup of speakers, so please take your seats if you can. Thank you so much. Um, Once again, I'm Sewell Chan, editor in chief of the Texas Tribune, and we're so proud to be co sponsors of this morning's conference with the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. I have the tremendous honor and privilege to introduce and interview Mr. Anthony Graves, who is the Director of Public Outreach for the Harris County Public Defender's Office. Welcome, Mr. Graves.
Thank you.
Mr. Graves, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about your life experiences, and I'm sure you've been interviewed dozens, if not hundreds of times about them. But I hope you don't mind if we start with a little bit of scene setting so that we can get to the policy issues
Of course.
that we're here to discuss this morning. In 1992, you were wrongly accused, falsely accused, of a horrific murder of 6 people, 5 children, and 1 grandmother. You were accused initially by your cousin's husband.
Correct.
He subsequently recanted, including before your trial, but your lawyer was never advised of that recantation.
Correct.
It gets much, much worse. I'm sure I'm oversimplifying it, but ultimately, your cousin's husband was convicted and was ultimately executed in the year 2000. His final words were that you, Anthony Graves, were innocent. You did not even know the victims. You were at that point had been yourself convicted and sentenced to death.
Correct.
Ultimately, you served 18 years of in prison, 12 of them on death row.
18 and a half. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
18 and a half years in prison, 12 of them on death row.
Yes.
Let me begin by asking, how did you survive your time in prison, knowing that you had been wrongly accused?
Wow. First of all, thank you all for having me here. I always like to answer that question by saying that naivete saved my life, right? And when I say that, I say it because had I really thought that they could actually kill me for something I knew absolutely nothing about, I probably would have lost my mind. But I stayed in that mindset of they just can't come pick me up and take me and put me on death row for somebody I know nothing about. Surely justice will prevail. And I stayed in that state of mind because that saved my life and it saved my sanity. Because had I just thought at any moment that they could actually kill me for something I knew absolutely nothing about, I probably wouldn't be sane today.
What kind of representation did you receive when you were initially arrested?
When I was initially arrested, and my first attorney was a private attorney. I had a friend who was well off, and when he heard I had gotten arrested, he hired a private attorney, right? Well-known private attorney. The problem with him hiring a private attorney was there was no oversight with that attorney. That attorney could come and go as he pleased. It was just, what was in his heart to do for me at that time because there was no rules and there was no oversight, right? So my experience with my first attorney was that I really didn't get to know my attorney.
Subsequently, were you represented by a different counsel at trial?
Yes, I was eventually represented by a court-appointed attorney who had very little experience with capital cases. As a matter of fact, he had never even tried a capital case. He had sat second chair on one that ended in a guilty plea. But other than that, he had no experience in capital murder cases.
Do you believe you would have been better served had there been a statewide agency to represent capital defendants?
Yes. And I say yes because I've had the privilege of working at the public defender's office. And I see the model that they have created, which is what I like to call criminal justice reform. That's what I see, because I see a team of attorneys working together on cases. I see everything in house, from investigator, mitigation specialist. Everything is in house. And you don't have to worry about that wheel. Okay. Uh, Hurry up and getting rid of your cases so that you can get another case, because that's how you make your living. You don't have to worry about that wheel with the public defender's office, which is why I'm still there. I didn't have no plans to come and hang out with the public defender's office. I was doing my own thing around the world. But I got here because, and I stay here because this is what I've been looking for. I've been looking for that model of criminal justice reform where everything is in house. You don't have to run to another county to get a mitigation specialist. You don't have to run to another county to get an investigator. Everything is in house, and they work together. They do mock trials, mock juries. I mean, everything is so impressive to me that I've stuck around.
Does such a system exist in Caldwell County, which is the county where you were arrested initially?
No, that system didn't exist. As I say, I had a court-appointed attorney, one that I very seldom seen out of the 2.5 years I was incarcerated there before the trial. I can probably count on one hand how many times I've seen that attorney. And as a result, I think that led to my wrongful conviction.
Mr. Graves, you were nearly or around 8 years in prison for a crime you, of course, had nothing to do with, when the man who falsely accused you was put to death by the state of Texas. And again, in those final minutes before he was put to death, he insisted that you were innocent. Tell me what was going through your mind during that time.
Well, at that time, I started to better understand the system that I was dealing with. And I knew that innocent alone wasn't going to get me home, right? There has to be some technicalities here. There has to be some constitutional violations, because just being innocent was not going to save my life. That's sad to say, but that is the truth. No one was concerned with my innocence at that point. They were trying to kill me. So my mind was to, as I said, I lived in that state of naivete, right? In terms of, surely you just can't execute me for something I don't know nothing about. But my mind was to basically pay attention to what was going on in my life, because, and I say that because when I got my first execution date, and the state told me that they was going to kill me on a certain date, the first thought came to my mind that saved my life was that I'm just going to live till I die, because can't nobody do nothing about that. You can't take that from me. So I'm just going to live till I die. That gave me life, because it made me understand the choices that I still had, regardless of the situations and the circumstances that existed. I still had choices. And so for that, I knew that I needed to pay attention, because when I came home, I wanted to do exactly what I'm doing today. And so it started back there. And with that mindset of getting out here and sharing with the rest of the world what our criminal justice system was doing to our innocent people.
I'm going to get back to the in a moment to what you just said about innocence alone is not enough, which is just shocking to the conscience. How did you maintain that mindset, that composure, the equanimity to be able to withstand being imprisoned unjustly? Was it faith? Was it support from family members? Was it something that already resided in you before you went behind bars?
Well, I like to say that it was something that was already in me before I went behind bars, because I had a great mother, and my mother raised me well. She did not raise a murderer, so I'll give all of that to her. She raised a great son. But for me, I think I just thought that it had to be something bigger than me. I mean, I'm a good person. I don't bother nobody, so why am I sitting on death row? It had to be something bigger than me, and that's kind of how I lived, that knowing that I was uh, caught up into something that was bigger than me, and I needed to pay attention so that I can come out and let everybody know. I needed to come out with the lived experience and let everybody know what we were doing to our citizens. So I lived knowing that I was caught up into something that was bigger than me, that was giving me sort of a purpose in my life, and I just need to pay attention.
Now, during your time on death row, if I understand correctly, you were held in solitary confinement.
Yes,
Which many reformers have now said that solitary confinement is a form of torture.
it is.
How did you preserve your own sanity during that time?
Oh wow, man! Writing letters, reading many books, just really cultivating a sort of a family an extended family around me. I had people all over the world that would write to me. I had an attorney who understood that in order to fight to free me, she first had to also make sure I stayed sane. So understanding that, she started visiting me regularly. She allowed her family to become part of like my family, right? And so there were great people in my life that understood that it wasn't just about freeing him; it was also about keeping him sane. And so from there, people worked to make sure that whatever they could do to kind of distract me for my daily routine, they would do, such as sending me books, newspapers, visitation letters. Those things kept me sane.
This attorney was a court-appointed attorney or private?
This attorney was a journalist that had came down to interview me one time, and really looked into my case, and ended up believing in my innocence. And from that point, she could not just walk away. And so she kind of reactivated her license and joined my team of attorneys, and became my best friend along the way.
Now, later on, another journalist also got involved in your case, the journalist Pamela Koloff, who wrote an incredible series of articles in 2010 to 2011 about your case. Did your lawyer journalist know Ms. Koloff? How did that happen?
They got to know each other well, and I would just go further to say they're like sisters today. That's what my case did for them. It brought great people together to do great work. But they discovered each other on that journey, and they built a great friendship. So, yeah, they knew each other.
In 2006, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit ruled that your case had not been properly handled because the exonerating or exculpatory evidence had not been presented to your lawyer. Is that correct?
Correct.
How did you get there? How did you feel at the time? And why did it still take another 4 years before you were out of prison?
Well, it's called the criminal justice system. you know, um, yeah, there was a lot of games played on me, from the prosecution to the Texas Rangers to just everyone involved. Everyone was moving in the direction of a guilty verdict before they had even discovered the case. I mean, it wasn't a case actually. They just took a piece of cloth and cut out a case, and they were able to convict a young black man and sentence him to death. Uh, I maintained my innocence the entire time. But more importantly, when I was there, I witnessed such inhumanity. How we're allowing our politicians to treat our citizens. The laws that we seem to be okay with, that are driving our citizens insane, and even killing them while they're innocent, mentally ill, should have deserved a lesser included charge. How I made it through all of that, man, is to know that something was always bigger than me, and that I needed to understand what was going on in my life, so that I could make sure that you understood why we need to change our system. Coming out and getting with the public defender's office and seeing the way they operate, and I mean, to me, it's like finally, after searching for so long, I finally found a place that uh, is exercising criminal justice reform. They have put the model in place. So I think for me, and I will answer your question when you asked again, because I forgot. But I'm just trying to say that at the end of the day, what saved my life was my faith, my naivete, and what drives me today is working with an organization such as PDO that understands criminal justice reform. They're on the right track. And I think that what my lived experience and what I come to know about this whole thing, I'm just trying to add something to what they're already doing that's great.
Why did it take 4 years between the Fifth Circuit's ruling in 2006 and your release from prison?
Well, because the state was still challenging it, right? And like I say, the wheels of justice turn slow, especially when they have to do the right thing. So 4 more years was litigation. The state just refusing to acknowledge that they had an innocent man in custody, and at the end of the day, they were seeking to kill me, not release me.
when you were released from prison in 2010, it was around a time where there was a lot of attention that really has still ongoing about the wrongful convictions and imprisonment of actually innocent people. What was that national attention like? Not only had you been freed after 18 years of wrongful imprisonment, but suddenly you were at the center of really a national discussion over criminal justice reform. How did you process that as you were trying to also return to some semblance of normalcy?
I don't know. For a minute there, I was like, "Man, I'm a star." know, then I realized the paycheck didn't add up to make me a star. I- so I'm just a public speaker now. But for me, man, it's like, look, I have no problem when we make a mistake, right? And it was a big mistake that they made in my life. The problem I have is when we don't try to learn from them to make the system better. It's a slap in my face that we still have the death penalty, knowing that you almost killed me twice. You gave me 2 execution dates. Right? It's a slap in my face to know that 12 to 13 men that you once sentenced to death here in the state of Texas is out walking among you, and you feel still encouraged to practice the death penalty. It's like I don't get it. You know it's not working, right? We have, and we always say we have a failed system. L- In here, can we just correct that? Our system is not failing us. Our system is working the way it was designed to work. Look at the numbers. Just look at the numbers. Why you think no one is in such a rush to fix this thing? It's not broken. It's working fine. We need to throw it out, throw it out with the bathwater and bring in a new 21st century criminal justice system. This system is outdated and it's not broken. It's outdated because when it came into play, it came into play when people didn't have rights. This system needs to be thrown out, and we need to bring in a new one that kind of reflects all of us. So
Just to be crystal clear, when you say the system is working as intended, are you referring to the legacies of slavery and, in particular, the convict labor system?
of course I am.
That-
Of course I am. I'm referring to that. And as I say, you look at the numbers. You got 12 to 13% of the population African American, but over 40, 50% of them represent our prison population. It's the numbers. It's all in the numbers. We can argue about everything else, but when you look at the numbers, it's facts. You know?
You mentioned that there's roughly a dozen Texas people who were convicted and sentenced to death and later exonerated.
Yes.
Have you all met up with each other? Is there kind of a support group?
We haven't just met up with each other to support each other. We know about each other, and we encourage the work that we all do. But for me, I really have purposely not worked with other exonerees, sit up here on the panel and tell our story. And the reason why is because I don't want sympathy. I don't want you guys to look at 5 exonerees up here and feel bad for me. I don't want that. I don't want you to merge all our cases together because these are not isolated incidents. This is what's happening in our criminal justice system. My case stands on its own. Any exoneree that comes up here, his case stands on its own. I don't need a platform for you. I mean, a panel for you all to see all of us up here together. No, I want you to hear my story, my pain, my family story, their pain. Whoever else is sitting up here has his own story. And I just have a problem with that because I think everyone wants to then lump us together and say, oh, how bad it is for them. No, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I want you to make change so that this doesn't happen to me or anyone else again. That's what I want. So I'm not going to sit up here and take I don't know, I guess sit on a panel and let everybody feel sorry for us. I'm not going to do that.
You're not looking for sympathy.
I don't want that. I want
You're-
change.
You're looking for justice.
Yes.
The lawyer who participated, who helped send you to prison wrongfully and unjustly for 18 years, was subsequently disbarred by.
Can I pause? I always like to take a moment when someone bring that up to say this. No. I disbarred his ass. Now we can move on. Okay, come on.
Given how rare that is for a prosecutor to face significant penalty, including loss of law license, how did that process come about?
Well, that was an amendment to a bill that allowed someone who had been wrongfully convicted to come out as a statute. And you had up to 4 years to file a grievance against the prosecutor. As to the statute of limitation would have just been 7 years and ran out because I was there for 18 and a half. So coming home under a new statute, I couldn't have filed a grievance because the statute of limitation would have gone out. But they amended that so that it runs after you get out. And so I had up to 4 years to file a grievance against him when they did that, after they amended that petition. I think it was Sophronia Thompson and John Whitmire. Them had worked to amend this petition. So when that happened, I came back and I filed a grievance against the prosecutor, and the state took up my case and represented me. Can you imagine? The state that tried to kill me now was representing me to disbar the prosecutor. And so that's how that took place. I filed a grievance against him.
Now, the prosecutor, by the time of the disbarment, had already retired, correct?
Yes.
Do you nonetheless feel that the disbarment was important, or did you feel it was somewhat symbolic?
Well, it was somewhat symbolic, but it was also very important because I wanted to show people that you don't have to pick up a gun to go get your style of justice. You can use those same laws on the book, right? You use that the same laws to go and get your justice. You don't have to pick up a gun. You don't have to go and be angry about it, but you can use that same system to seek justice. And so I wanted to show other people who have been wrongfully convicted or who were still sitting behind those bars, just waiting to have their chance for their case to be heard. I wanted them to know that this is how you can do it, you know. And so, yeah, it was symbolic because he was already retired. I think he should have went to prison. As a matter of fact, the hearing that we had, he had the option of having it in public versus having it in private. He had talked so much mess about me in public, but when it came turn to find out what happened, he wanted to do it in private. So, but yeah, I did it for other people.
Mr. Graves, you talk about having survived prison through your naivete, which is a really interesting choice of words.
Mhm.
You've talked about preserving your sanity while you were in prison. How did you preserve your humanity? How did you not turn hard-hearted or cold, or turn, into not only a place of despair, but also a place of rage,
Right.
which would seem very understandable for someone in your circumstances?
Well, number one, I believe in God, and I had faith, right? And I knew that no man could put on no more on me than I could bear. And the reason why I say that, I'll tell you a story. I had been in jail a little over 3 weeks, and I had been cooperating with them 110%. I mean, so much so that even the Texas Rangers said I've been cooperating with them without an attorney, right? And they came back about 3.5 weeks after I'd been in jail, and they gave me an indictment. They served me some indictment papers. And I had been reading my Bible, the whole time I've been there. And when they gave me those indictment papers, I was angry. And I had the Bible on my bed, and I picked it up and I threw it in the corner. I didn't want to read that no more because I've been trying to do the right thing. I've been reading this Bible. Here I am. I don't supposed to be in jail, but yet they just indicted me. And by 3 or 4 o'clock that morning when I couldn't sleep, that Bible was still sitting over there in the corner. And something just told me, go pick your Bible up. And I went and picked my Bible up, and I can't remember the page, but to paraphrase it, when I opened it up and sit back on my bunk, what I read told me that God wasn't going to put no more on me than I could bear. And that began to change my thought process about what was happening in my life. And I started beginning to pay attention. Even before I got sentenced to death, I started paying attention, and I started witnessing history here. I'm a young black man here. I've been accused of something with no evidence, and yet I can't even get my freedom. They won't even give me a bond. This is history here. I feel like Dred Scott. Okay, I'm starting to feel Dred Scott up in here. I know a lot of you know about Dred Scott, but that's how I'm feeling in this system, right? I have no rights Even though I'm innocent, I have no right. So I need to pay attention because I need to come out and make a difference with this here because that's the only way I can make sense of what's happening to my life.
The Dred Scott case, probably seen as the most notorious case in the U.S. Supreme Court's history, said that black people had no rights that white Americans were bound to respect.
Mm,
More than a century later, in Gideon versus Wainwright,
mm.
a very different Supreme Court in a very different time, said that the Sixth Amendment could only be made meaningful if criminal defendants who cannot afford a lawyer are provided one. How do you feel about the Supreme Court today?
Uh, I, I think that the Supreme Court today is very political. And it's sad because, that's supposed to be where, everything gets sorted out on our constitutional rights. And I don't think it's happening today. I think we are so polarized now that, it's very divided. And it's sad because the little man is going to suffer.
Over the past decade and a half, there have been some bipartisan efforts at criminal justice reform, including some legislation that passed during the presidency of Donald Trump. Did those legislative reforms give you some hope that things might be trending in a better direction?
Well, listen, that doesn't just give me hope. The fact that we're out here and we're having these discussions give me hope. The fact that when I hear these young kids get up and they speak and they protest and give me hope. That's nothing that the federal government has done that gives me hope. But it's everything that people on the ground are doing that gives me hope. It is what TIDC is doing. It is what the PDO is doing that gives me hope. It is definitely not what a politician is doing because it was a politician that tried to kill me. Okay.
So ultimately, it's your belief that social movements
Of
and
course.
people power are what drive change?
It is. It is definitely what drives change. You remember our politicians work for us. We elect them. Okay. So they want to know how you feel. When you tell them you feel a certain way and they see that that's the way that it's trending, then they get on board. So it's definitely people power. We are the people. And and this is our power. But we just don't utilize it, right? Because I think we've been distracted. We've been distracted with chaos. We've been distracted with so many things that we done forgot that we are their bosses and we are the ones that elect them. And they doing it our way or we go get somebody else. And when we can understand that that's the power we really do have, we can make change. We the people.
So, Mr. Graves, we're here speaking right now in an auditorium at the Texas State Capitol, where public servants who ostensibly work for the voters, for the people, are meeting right now in their legislative session. This legislature did vote to give you monetary compensation for the wrongful imprisonment that you endured. Tell me what.
They owe me more then. If that's what they did, they owe me more. Because I got a job now. I still got to go to work. I shouldn't have to do that. Right. So when we talk about compensation, that's sort of like an insult to me. You don't get to tell me how much you think my life was worth after you've done all these things to me because I can never go back and see my kids graduate. I can never go back and see them do all the things they did when they was young and wanted their dad around. And then you turn around and tell me, oh, well, I think it was worth that amount of money. That's a slap in my face. That's an insult. So no, they gave me a little money to start my life over, but they never compensated me. The only way you compensate me, you get rid of the death penalty and you reform our criminal justice system. That is your apology to me. And without that, you'll never apologize.
You've gone on to write about your experiences. Can you tell us what that's been like?
Oh man, my experiences have been great. I've met great people out here doing great work. People like Ben Wolf, Jeff, all these amazing people out here have geared me up to do the kind of work I'm doing today. When I came out, I knew I wanted to do something, but I just didn't know what it was. I had been looking at my attorneys who were working on my behalf and seeing how they were moving and, how at the end of the day when she went home, and I'm talking about one in particular, to spend time with her family, she also made sure that she dotted the I's and crossed the T's on my case for that evening, right? I was important in her life, and she was showing me how to advocate, right? So when I came home, I knew what I wanted to do. I want to advocate. And it's all I really know is the criminal system. So I want to advocate for a better system and I want to use my story, right? And so what I've been able to do is crisscross this country, sharing my story to encourage people to get in and make changes in our criminal justice system. And so I've been doing all of that, and I discovered while I've been working with the criminal justice system, some of the things that we can do that can help. And we haven't done it yet, but I think we will. You can ask me what that is, and I'll tell you.
Well, I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear, about your journey to the Harris County Public Defender's Office.
Yeah.
Inherently working at a public defender's office, you're kind of working case by case, but you're also clearly making an argument for systemic legislative and political reform and judicial reforms. How do you balance that? And, why didn't you become just only a policy activist, or on the other end, just a speaker? Why did you decide to work kind of within, be a part of a system that had done you such wrong?
Because I felt that if you're going to really make change, you got to get involved and be a part of the change, and that means to get involved in the system, right? I could have got out, and I could have just taken the little money they gave me and went and bought me a condo and just been done with this. I tried that, right? I tried that when I came home. I bought a condo, I bought a brand new car, and I thought that was good for my life. And everybody else seen me and they was happy for me, but nobody seen me crying at night. Nobody knew that I was on my balcony not knowing if I could make it out here or not, And then the next day they'd see me and they smile and they wave, but they didn't know what the pain, the struggles that I was dealing with, And I knew that I had to figure something out. I had to figure it out quick. And the one thing I knew was criminal justice, because it had been in my life for like 2 decades at that point. And so I knew that in order for me to make it out here, I needed to hold on to criminal justice until I could get my footing, right? So I started speaking and just sharing my story, and then seeing the way people were responding and asking me what can they do to help was like, okay, I'm in the right space here. This is not about money, right? This is about touching people and getting them to understand why we together need to make this change in our criminal justice system. Because if we do not, then you're going to be trading places with me one day, talking about your son, your daughter, your loved one, or even yourself. So it is very urgent that we come together and try to figure this thing out, because this thing is running rampantly. I was not the only innocent person back there. As a matter of fact, I guarantee, well, I ain't gonna say I guarantee, but I can promise we just killed someone innocent last week. Had an innocent case. I've been knowing him since I was down there. Yeah. So this thing is still going on. Right. And this is why it's urgent that we come together to make these changes.
We've been talking about the exonerations of the actually innocent for well over a decade, maybe probably 15 years or so, talking about the effects of mass incarceration, obviously talking about Black Lives Matter, particularly since 2014. And then, of course, the racial reckoning that many in this country, not all, but that many encountered or went through in 2020. Do you see in those developments signs of progress, or is it more nuanced than that?
I say signs of progress. And the reason why I say signs of progress, because a lot of those things used to be done and we didn't talk about them. There was like behind closed doors. We didn't address those issues. We're addressing these issues now. You know what I'm saying? We're addressing them out and we're talking about them. And that's good, right? Because that's the only way we can get to the change that we're seeking. But I think it's a good thing, and I think we're moving forward, right? But you have to rip the Band-Aid off first, and I think that's what we have been doing, right? And so now we're addressing the wound. So yeah, I think it's a good thing.
What would you most like to see the Texas legislature do during this current legislative session?
Abolish the death penalty. It's abolish the death penalty. It does not work. I mean, we can execute 9 guilty people, but if we execute number 10 that's innocent, is that enough to keep the death penalty around? I don't think so, right? 1 is too many, right? And so I know we executed many that were innocent or that should have had a lesser included offense, but because they didn't have good legal representation, they found themselves on the gurney, And I'm not just talking; these are facts. I live there. I talk with these people every day. I seen them cry. I watched their families come down there. I knew their stories. And yet they were all going on the gurney.
Why does Texas continue to have the nation's largest death row?
Because for some reason we done bought into this being tough on crime thing to where we're so tough now we're stupid. And that's why we have one of the largest populations, because we're so tough on crime till we become stupid with how we handle our people.
What would you like to see done when it comes to indigent defense in Texas? Is it more funding or is it changes in the system itself?
Definitely more funding. We can never have enough funding. Right? We need serious funding when we come talk about criminal justice and criminal justice reform. But I've been listening since I've been here to some people talking about the shortage of attorneys, talking about the rural areas that we can't get to and really serve. But I'm saying to myself, listen, people, we got 5 million people that's incarcerated, and they come home, right? And they have lived experience, and they know how to help you attorneys. They know how to go and help you with your clients. They know how to help with the families. They know how to get information that you can't get from your client and bring back to you. Why aren't we not using these lived experiences? It's a unique skill set. I've been trying to introduce this to the public since I've come home. So I'm at the public defender's office now, and they give me an opportunity to hire formerly incarcerated men and women to train them on how to go into the jails, mentor our clients, educate their families, get the information from them that you as an attorney can get, and bring it back to you so that you can, to get to the best outcome. Right? So then when you as an attorney want to spend some, as it was talking about balancing life and work, you want to spend some time with your family, but you got 4 or 5 clients that are in jail that's looking for you to show up. Well, why not have that peer navigator go show up for you? He has the same lived experience. He knows what he's going through, and they're going to build a relationship of trust just on that. And that's going to help you, Mr. Attorney, so that when you go back and see your client is still on the same page with you, because your peer navigator has been making sure that he understands that because you haven't came doesn't mean you have abandoned him. You're still working your butt off for him, but you got 5 and 6 other cases. He'll take that information from me more so than he'll take it from his attorney. And so that's what I've been trying to implement, is this whole peer navigator support system.
Has this peer navigator model been adopted by public defender offices elsewhere in Texas or in the nation?
Well, it's only been adopted here in Harris County, but I spoke with a lot of chief public defender's office yesterday, did a webinar. They're very interested in it, but it's new, right? So, when something is new, you have to educate people about it. And so that's what I've been doing, is trying to educate people about, listen, we have a lot of people with lived experience that can help you with your cases. You got 30, 40 cases. You cannot give quality time to each of your clients, and they need that. If you're talking about making sure they're staying sane, well, then they need that quality time that you can't give them. But what you can do, knowing that, is get somebody down there for them, and that is someone who had that same lived experience that can now encourage you to stay sane and to fight for your freedom while you're along with your attorney. But unfortunately, our attorneys, we make them attorneys, we make them social workers, investigators. We give them a lot of hats. Psychotherapists that they didn't even go to school for. But we want them to perform that. And that's not the way it used to be. Baristas used to go talk to, take care of the clients. Right, attorneys fought for their lives, but now it's like they want the attorney to do everything, and as a result, we're having to break down our system.
And so the peer navigators, in your view, can help overburdened, underfunded public defenders actually do a better job at their job of representation.
And it don't cost as much as an attorney. They don't cost as much as an attorney, but they have the lived experience to go down there and communicate with your clients while you trying to have a life sometimes.
Coming out of the system, Mr. Graves, did you ever contemplate leaving Texas?
No, because I knew that this is where the fight was, and I knew that if I was going to keep my word to my God, that I had to stay here in Texas.
Finally, for people who are watching this video, perhaps who are either currently or formerly incarcerated, what message would you want them to take away from our discussion today?
Well, I want them to know that change is coming. Hold on. Do everything you can to stay sane. Read, write, whatever you have to do, man. I understand. But change is coming because I'm out here and I see it every day. I see the people that are in the trenches fighting. They're fighting for real change. And I know you guys can't see this, and I understand when you don't see your attorney, you think they're not working for you. That's not true. I can say that today it's not true because I'm out here working with them. But what I'm trying to do is get them to send somebody to you to help you. So hold on. The cavalry is coming.
Anthony Graves, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us.
Thank you.